This band is slowly becoming one of the most covered artists on my channel, and that is purely because, well, they just keep pumping out albums. Hi people, and hello my Chili kind of crew, it's Chili here, the man who produced Design for My Eyes, on a 5-minute review on Hawkwind's newest album, There Is No Space For Us. With 3 albums out in the last 3 years, Hawkwind have only become more prolific in their age. These guys aren't just the pioneers of space rock, they practically invented it, and true to their namesake, this album's title lives up to their genre. In fact, when I heard that Hawkwind had released a new album, my first thought was, is it time for daylight savings already? Seriously, 3 albums in 3 years. The best tool could offer us was a press release saying that they were going back into the record studio to record some new material after a 6-year gap. I can't say I was entirely looking forward to this record. In fact, I didn't even factor it in as part of my items to review before going away. But it just kind of popped up on my list when I was checking out these new records, and well, I found myself with a small amount of time to listen to this album. And I gotta say that my first impressions of this album are actually very positive. After The Future Never Waits, I kind of figured the band were just clocking out, and Stories from Time and Space was just plain forgettable, to say the least, so my bar was set very low coming into this newest effort. The opening track, There Is Still Danger Out There, begins off with a quirky sound effect that is, of course, not out of place, of course, if you have heard Hawkwind albums, but then we get this very nice chugging riff that plays out with robotic rhythm, and it's not a bad way really to kick off this record. Where things really do take it into the next gear, however, is on the third track, Co-Pilot, which kind of gave me Santana vibes for a minute, and this is because of the staccato acoustic guitar work played over the smooth jazz sounding chords here. I had to check a few times whether I was still listening to Hawkwind, because it just didn't feel like Hawkwind, but at the same time, I didn't mind this little breakaway from its normal pace. I guess this track caught me off guard, but hey, with a nice 8-minute runtime, it manages to change its style quite a few times within the tune, and of course added a nice progressive flair to its duration. Also, these vocal harmonies, they're just beautiful. Now this might be a little bit corny, but I feel like this album, well, it just transcends the usual elements that I've heard within the band's camp as of lately, and this partial piece of experimentation, well, it's certainly a nice change of pace for the band, if you will. The following piece is Changes, and no, it's definitely not a cover of David Bowie's song, but you know, that could be actually interesting if you think about it. No, instead, Changes follows the path previously heard on earlier efforts with spacey synth sections and a brooding guitar part that is played over, of course, the band that is just jamming out. At times I thought I heard saxophones, but maybe that was a guitar tone in key sections. Either way, whatever it was just majestic, and again, true to form, it's another long piece at nearly 10 minutes in runtime. The title track is somewhat of a change of pace, with a bit of a bluesy vibe going for it with its short length, and I really dig it. The acoustics trip off this album. Of course, it feels longer than it goes for, leading into new elements over, well, the space it takes up. One of the most intriguing aspects that I discovered over listening to the album was on the song The Outer Region of the Universe, and how it reminded me of Porcupine Tree to a degree. Not their later more famous material, rather their earlier works like on Up the Downstairs, which I thought was fascinating, because I always just figured they were just another Pink Floyd fanboy with their early career, but instead this puts it on a whole new aspect on their earlier stuff in particular that I had never really considered. Anyway, the album closes out with a more grounded piece called A Long Way From Home that doesn't rely on spacey, trippy sound effects, and I dig at this piece. It might be a bit repetitive in sections, but it's a nice way to close out the album with a more sober sounding affair that feels rather familiar. Now, with Dave Brock pushing 80 and still touring, he has to be one of the hardest working musicians out there on the field, and of course credit where credit is due. Hawkwind is his band, as much as Santana is Carlos Santana's band. Regardless of about 400 lineup changes, the idea still is at the core after 37 albums that they are going strong, which beggars belief at this point. I can never see them live being, photosensitive, but if you are listening to this review, I urge you to do so if you don't suffer from epilepsy, because who knows how long we have left before this band rides out into the solar system. All I know is this album is a solid listen, and I'm sure that the fans will enjoy it. Overall, I'm going to give this album a score of 7.5 million chilies on the spicy scale, with my favourite tracks being The Co-Pilot, Changes, Burning Suns and Frozen Waste, and A Long Way From Home. Again, I would implore you to listen to this band, and especially if you haven't heard of them and are into the prog rock and space rock fields. These guys are maestros in the field and just showed us why on here with one of their best albums in years, I feel. But I want to hear your thoughts on this album, so as always, comment below, tell me your favourite tracks, and as always, stay spicy out. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.